Welcome to Vector Solutions, how to protect your organization with an emergency mass notification system, or an EMNS. Few housekeeping rules and items. We are going to be recording this webinar, and whatever email you provided as a registrant, it will be sent to that email. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the questions icon and I will be able to respond to you privately. Also, that questions function is there to have any comments or questions for our hosts as towards the end of the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, when you sign out, there will be a short essay, or a short survey for your feedback, and it would be appreciated. Vector Solutions, we are here to make you safer, smarter, and better. Please, for any of your solutions, check out vectorsolutions.com. And I'm going to hand it over now to Alex.
All right, perfect. So to start us off, we are just going to each introduce ourselves. So I'm Alex Brunges. I'll be the host of today's webinar. I've been with Vector LiveSafe for over a year now, and I primarily focus on content creation and communications.
Hi, I'm Lanio Dalcour. I work with Brookfield Properties. I oversee the DC, Virginia, and Maryland region. I'm the Director of Security and Life Safety, and I also serve on Brookfield's global security team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Hudak. I'm on the product management team here at Vector Solutions, and I'll be walking you through the LiveSafe Alert demo today.
Wonderful. So before we dive into the presentation, I want to provide a brief overview of the Vector LiveSafe platform for anyone who may not be familiar. So LiveSafe is a risk management and safety communications platform that is used for both inbound and outbound safety communications. So in daily practice, what this typically looks like is employers can send broadcast notifications to employees about operational changes, organizational updates, or health and safety concerns and response. And employees in turn can submit questions or report safety and security concerns using the app. So I've listed a few key LiveSafe features here on the left, and on the right, you can see the home screen of the LiveSafe application, as well as a screen presented to employees when they choose to submit a message. So employees can choose to submit these messages anonymously if desired, and once they do submit a tip, they can engage in two-way messaging with security teams to get their concern addressed. LiveSafe also has a resources section that is configurable based on your organization's needs, so you can upload policies, procedures, link to organizational guidance or state and local resources. There's also one-touch access to emergency information. So on this home screen, you can see one-touch access to local law enforcement. You can also upload information about your organization's security team for easy contact. And there are more features that I haven't even listed here, but overall, LiveSafe really provides a comprehensive communications platform that makes it very easy for organizations to communicate with employees and understand any threats that their workforce may be facing. So to start off our presentation today, here is an agenda of what we will be discussing. So first, I will provide an overview of EMNS systems and discuss key features and functionality. I will then provide some examples of EMNS usage, and we'll talk to Lanio Dalcour about how LiveSafe has been used by Brookfield Properties to facilitate safety. My colleague Jeff Hudak will then present a live demo of LiveSafe Alert, which is Vector Solutions' newest EMNS-specific offering from the LiveSafe platform. And lastly, we will have a Q&A session to address any outstanding questions that you may have for any of our speakers. So to start us off, I'm going to provide an overview of EMNS systems. So EMNS systems are one-way broadcast communication platforms designed to facilitate incident preparedness and response. They typically rely on multi-channel alerts, so they may be sent to employees via text message, email, push notification, or more. And they could be used to notify all employees, groups of employees, or even individuals. And these platforms are used by organizations of all sizes, from higher education institutions to small and large businesses to even governmental agencies. And one example you may be familiar with is the United States Federal Communications Commission uses emergency alerts to notify the public about critical situations. So if you've ever gotten a flood warning or an Amber Alert on your phone, this is an example of emergency alerts in action. These platforms are incredibly valuable for crisis prevention and response. So if an emergency situation occurs, you can instantly notify all employees of the threat and appropriate response guidance. And one thing I will also note is many of you may be familiar with EMNS platforms or emergency notification systems. And the key difference between EMNS and EMNS is that these EMNS platforms are also designed to facilitate more routine communications. So in addition to being incredibly valuable in a crisis, they can also facilitate regular notifications to employees, such as reminders about upcoming events, information about operational changes, such as days off of work, or IT service changes, things of that sort. So they really provide a comprehensive way to keep employees informed. So if you are looking for an EMNS platform or wondering what key features to look out for, here are 5 that we consider to be the most important, and I'm going to briefly go through each of them. The first is rapid multi-channel delivery. So when it comes to emergency communications in particular, speed and deliverability are key. Particularly during an immediate crisis, such as an active shooter situation, the ideal EMNS platform can deploy alerts to all employees within minutes or even within seconds, because the longer it takes to get this information out, the longer employees have to wait for critical information. And in addition to rapid deployment, EMNS messages should also be compatible with multiple delivery systems, because this ensures that all recipients receive messages regardless of their preferred method of communication. So here you can see an example from the LiveSafe platform where messages are being developed for email, SMS, and push notification. The second key feature is message customization. So particularly when engaging several communication channels, it's important to be able to customize messages. For example, emails may want to include more text or have a subject line, things of that sort. And in addition to customizing messages for each channel, some EMNS platforms also offer message templates for particular crises to save time. So that may be a preset template for a fire drill or for an active assailant scenario. Other platforms also enable you to create your own preset messages. So if you have certain threats you want to be aware of or that commonly affect your organization, you can develop preset templates so that you can deploy those messages even more quickly in times of need. The third key feature is recipient grouping. And this allows messages to be segmented based on defined recipient characteristics. So within a workforce environment, this may be by office building on your corporate campus, different departments within your organization, or even different roles or different power structures within your organizational hierarchy. And this is incredibly valuable because particularly right now, workforces can be very diverse and somewhat disparate. You might have some employees working in the office while others are on the road or working from home. And whenever possible, you want to make sure you only send pertinent messages to employees so they're not receiving alerts that do not apply to them. You can also use these different recipient grouping options to help inform different employees of upcoming events. So for example, if you have mandatory training coming up for a certain department, selecting that recipient group and sending only that group that information. The fourth key feature is geofencing. And what geofencing does is it enables administrators to draw digital fences on a map so that messages can be targeted to those within a specific area, whether it be on an organization's campus or beyond. So this is really valuable for location-specific threats such as a natural disaster or a more targeted crisis. And this can occur on your organization's campus or other areas. So for example, if you have some workers who are visiting another office in the same town, you can draw a fence around that location if there is a threat only within that area. And this can also come down to a smaller level as well. We have a sports and entertainment client who engaged the LiveSafe platform during an evacuation drill. And during this drill, one of their emergency exits was unavailable. So they drew a geofence around that location, and anytime employees were nearing that exit, they sent them a message informing them of the next exit they should use instead. So this is a great way to ensure that employees are aware of location-specific updates and that those outside of that area do not receive unnecessary messages. And the last key EMNS platform feature I'm going to talk about is reporting and analytics, or insights into these broadcast deliveries and response. So once you've implemented one of these platforms, you really want to make sure it's reliably reaching your intended audience. So specifically, you should ask EMNS providers if they can inform you of message deliverability, message receipt, response to broadcast check-ins, and any other relevant metrics that you may need. And on the bottom right here, you can see an image of a broadcast check-in message. And what this is when you send a broadcast to employees, you can actually prompt them to reply with key information in this example. And oftentimes this is whether they are okay or they need help. So if there is an incident such as a fire in your office building, You can immediately inform employees and very quickly know whether they require further assistance or they are okay. And in the image above, you can see some of the metrics that LiveSafe provides for these broadcast messages. You can see delivery metrics, the intended audience, responses to these check-ins, and the message itself. And this is also helpful for informing you if there are any messages that did not go through. So if there are employees who may not know of this information and may need to update their contact information. So once you've engaged an EMNS platform in your organization, or if you are considering it and aren't quite sure the benefit that it would provide, I'm just going to go over a few different ways that EMNS platforms can be helpful. So the first and arguably the most obvious is during crisis communications. So during an emergency, such as a lockdown, an active assailant situation, broadcast alerts can be used to immediately and reliably inform community members of immediate threats and advise them of relevant response procedures, such as evacuation guidance. And in addition to a crisis communications and emergency situations, it's also valuable to use EMNS for more emerging threats. And one example of this is suspicious activity. If your organization notices that there is a suspicious person or vehicle or package, you can use EMNS to alert employees to this and implore them to reply if they have further information or insights, and to keep an eye out for similar behavior. And this can prevent these threats, emerging threats to us, from escalating into crises. A third way you can use EMNS is for facilities hazards. So if you receive reports of a workplace hazard, such as exposed wiring, a water leak, a broken elevator, you can use EMNS to inform employees about this hazard and avoid potential worker injury and resulting sick days or workers' compensation claims. Another way to use EMNS is for local guidance. So this can be valuable for weather warnings, road closures, local curfews, such as we've seen a bit during COVID, protest activity, or any nearby hazards. Geofencing can also come in handy for this local guidance, so you can alert employees only in affected areas. And another way to use EMNS that goes back to what I was saying about non-emergency updates is for organizational changes. So if you have an upcoming holiday, if you have IT service alerting, an intranet outage, anything like that, you could use EMNS for these routine updates. And this is a really great way to build platform trust and ensure that employees understand that they're receiving pertinent messages. So in a time of need or a crisis, they're familiar with the platform, they are prepared to respond. And the last example I'm going to give here is safety drills. I mentioned an example from a sports and entertainment client. For evacuation drills, EMNS can come in handy, similar for fire drills, lockdown drills, anything of that sort. They can be used to provide information about procedures and policies and to ensure that employees are safe. And to give a little bit of more insight here, here's an example of some broadcast messages that LiveSafe has been used for in the past year. So this first one is instituting a lockdown in response to a threatening email. The next one is advising employees of a vaccine clinic on location. The third is a suspicious vehicle near an organization's offices and advising employees that more information will be released soon. And the last is reminding employees to stay safe during protest activity and providing them with contact information should they have any questions. And so these are a great couple of examples demonstrating the ways that EMNS can be used for more emergency situations, such as this lockdown due to a threat, as well as to remind employees about relevant updates, such as a vaccine clinic, or just to make it clear that you are aware of surrounding threats, such as protests or suspicious vehicles, and you will keep them informed and let them know if any action needs to be taken. So I'm going to pass it off to Shannon right now for a poll.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, the quick poll right now is, does your organization use an emergency notification system, EMNS, or an emergency mass notification system, EMNS? Alex, right now we have about 54% that are saying no. They don't, I guess, use either. 35% are I don't know, and kind of is going a little bit between more of the no's and the I don't knows.
Interesting. Okay, well, if that sounds like you, then this resource might be helpful. If your organization either doesn't have or is considering getting an EMNS platform, we've put together this great buyer's guide. It's a free resource available at this bit.ly link or on the white papers and guides section of the Vector Solutions website. And it provides a lot of the information I've discussed so far in this webinar in more detail, and provides some more examples of different ways that EMNS platforms can be engaged to maintain organizational safety and provide ongoing communication. So I urge you to check this out if you are considering deploying an EMNS platform. So before we move into our discussion with Lynile about LiveSafe usage at Brookfield Properties, I want to provide a brief overview of LiveSafe Alert. I mentioned this briefly earlier. It's LiveSafe's EMNS specific offering. So it includes some of the core communication functionality of LiveSafe, but really focuses on that broadcast alerting capability. So it allows you to create customized broadcast notifications across multiple channels. It has dynamic audience targeting, configurable check-ins, as well as comprehensive reporting and analytics. So this is a great way to communicate in a timely and effective manner during emergencies or during more routine communications. And we'll hear more about this from Jeff Hudak during the alert demo in a few moments. And I would like to note before we speak with Lynile that Brookfield Properties utilizes LiveSafe Enterprise. So it has all of LiveSafe's EMNS functionality plus additional features. So if you hear of some features that may not seem strictly to be EMNS, that may be because they are LiveSafe Enterprise features. So you're now going to have a conversation with Lynile Dalcour from Brookfield Properties about how EMNS has provided value to his organization and helps them prevent and address incidents. Brookfield's been a client for several years, and they've had really great success with utilizing this platform to keep their tenants and their properties safe. So Lynile, thank you so much for being here. And to start out, could you introduce yourself and provide a brief overview of Brookfield Properties?
Sure. My name is Lynile Dalcour. I've been with Brookfield a combined 28 years, 16 directly with Brookfield. The previous years were with our previous company, Trizet. Brookfield is a commercial real estate company. We have a national and global footprint throughout the world. We're really big here in the U.S. portfolio. Specifically, my portfolio, I am up to around 30 properties covering D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. But we also have assets in New York, Knoxville, Tennessee, Houston, Texas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, Colorado. And quite naturally, we are also in Canada, Australia, as well as other international locations from a commercial real estate standpoint. We're in a unique situation where Brookfield has dedicated life safety and security directors like me in every region to ensure that our staff and tenants are getting the proper training and proper tools for an effective emergency management plan.
That's great. So as Lynile said, Brookfield is one of the largest real estate managed companies and is very dedicated to tenant and property safety. So as such, they engage a variety of platforms to facilitate safety. And here are a few of them. So Lynile, could you tell me a little bit more about how LiveSafe plays into Brookfield's security positioning?
So we use LiveSafe. It is definitely a part of our everyday operational process from every property, but it extends beyond that. We use LiveSafe for all kind of notifications. We do a lot of engagement with tenants when it comes to LiveSafe. We tie in LiveSafe as far as broadcast messaging into our visitor management system. So if there's any new procedures or any new policies. One example is during the pandemic, we went to a touchless visitor management system, and our means of notifying the tenants across the DC, Virginia, Maryland portfolio was through our broadcast messaging features in LiveSafe. We certainly use it for, it assists us with our internal incident reporting system, CIP. We certainly use it for notification for cybersecurity management as well as CCTV systems. But one of the places that we use it and get probably the most effective use out of it is in our JSOC in New York. We have a Joint Security Operations Center that services the New York portfolio, but it also is equipped to serve the national portfolio. Each specific region does have their version of a SOC, a Security Operations Center. That's primarily where we are getting information from from tenants and staff as regards to tips and dashboards, but we also use it to push information out and share intelligence that we receive from our law enforcement partners anytime there's any kind of major event like the civil unrest of 2020. And then in addition to that, the January 6th insurrection that happened here in the nation's capital. LiveSafe was a big part of our notification process during that day.
So you've talked about this a little bit in that previous slide, but can you tell me a little bit more about LiveSafe usage at Brookfield? How is it typically used, and do you have any further insights?
Sure. So we use it in different ways. So I'll first start off with from the property management perspective. One of the reasons that we use LiveSafe is because we found that it was a very ineffective method for our property managers when they had an emergency situation. They would have to literally go down a phone list and call people and say, "Hey, this is happening. This is happening." So it can take anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes for all tenants to be called, and then all the responsibilities they had with notifying senior level management, to include the director of security and life safety. So we had tried different mass communication systems before LiveSafe, and what we found is that we were giving information out and sending messages out, but we were not serving the tenants to our best of our abilities because we did not have a means to receive information from tenants. So when I met the folks at LiveSafe after they met our team in New York, and I know for me, it was very intriguing because any feedback we got from tenants was they weren't willing to sign up for our mass communication because it was ineffective to them, because they could never tell us nothing other than something that we may have scripted for them to say, press 1 for this or press 2 for that. Our tenants actually fell in love with the app, but there was 2 features that really stood out to our tenants. They loved to be able to give a tip during real emergencies, or during real times, and that we have 24/7 security in every building. So we're monitoring the dashboard for that particular building 24 hours, 7 days a week. We did a unique thing here with LiveSafe where each building has their own individual built-in dashboard that's specific to that site and that group of tenants. So when the tenant actually logs in, they don't have to do a lot. They just have to search Brookfield, their building, choose their company, and then now they have full access to the app to receive broadcast messaging and to also send messaging back to us. We never had that in the past. The other feature that I believe tenants really fell in love with was the ability to have the safe walk feature. We found that many love that because they were able to send messages to their loved ones, not necessarily to security, but they were able to send a message with a text message, to a loved one that can monitor them walking, say, from point A to point B. I have a person leaving the office at 10 p.m. and he or she's walking to the train, and they may just want their spouse to be able to monitor them walking to that train station, and they're able to put in their destination. It tells them how long it should take, and the receiver doesn't even have to have LiveSafe, which was one of the things that I think our tenants love. The receiver only needs to be able to have a phone that can receive a text message link, and I think for us, our tenants loved it. We immediately had a huge population. Our previous system, the DC region, we probably had a 25% tenant population that had signed up for the mass communication system. Within 6 months of having LiveSafe, that was easily 50%. And I believe at our highest peak, we had about 75% of our tenants had signed up for the app. That is unheard of. What we normally get is tenant contacts willing to sign up for it. We never really get staff. Well, LiveSafe was able to produce something different for them. And so I think that was one of the reasons that the tenant staff decided to sign up. If I could just speak on one other usage piece that we found to be very effective, and this was not in the plans when we first signed up with LiveSafe, it was the security team. The security team decided to use the app as a means to notify property management of any incident or emergency situation that's happening in a building. And initially, I didn't understand the point of using it, but it makes perfect sense. Part of their job is to observe and report. They see an incident happening, they're to start a notification process, and then they're to focus on the issue. Well, the security officers found it to be more effective to send the emergency as a tip, because how LiveSafe is set up, every property manager, the director of security, the security supervisor, the chief engineer, whenever a tenant sends a tip to a building, each person on that property management team gets an email that tip came. The security officers thought that's the best way to get everybody notified that I have an incident. And then now I could focus on the actual incident that's in front of me, opposed to spending a significant amount of time dialing my supervisor and then all of the property managers and everyone that came along with it. So there's a lot of unique ways that we use the LiveSafe feature, and it is definitely part of our day-to-day operations at every property we have here.
That's wonderful to hear. And Lanile also called upon a couple of features I didn't mention yet in this I haven't mentioned in this webinar, but Safe Walk is a great one, that virtual companion when walking home or on any of your commutes. And you can also use that while driving. Definitely that anonymous tip submission functionality. Those are really great features. And based on what you said, it really makes sense. We pulled some data from Brookfield usage, and it looks like from 2019 to 2020 and likely in 2021 as well, you're really seeing usage go up. So it seems clear that trust and engagement with the platform is increasing, and your tenants and security teams are really finding value here. So to move into a more specific example of LiveSafe's value at Brookfield Properties, I'd love to talk about one specific example, which is the inauguration protests. So as many listeners may know, during the 2017 presidential inauguration, there were protests across Washington, D.C. near one of Brookfield's property locations. So Lanile, can you tell me a little bit about how Brookfield used LiveSafe before and during this event to facilitate security communications and prevent property damage?
Sure. Well, if I can just speak a little bit about the 2017 presidential election, it will be considered one of the most intriguing elections in modern history. From the offset of the campaign season, there was never any clear-cut favorite of who was going to win the election. The polls constantly changed on who was leading the charge. After the election was decided and the country elected its 45th president, the District of Columbia focus immediately went to preparation for the inauguration. As the director of security and life safety for Brookfield, my responsibility was to create an emergency procedure and life safety plans for tenants, building staff, and at that time, our 24 commercial office buildings throughout the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia area to get us through the day of the inauguration when you have scheduled thousands and thousands of people to be in town for this event. So we started some pre-inauguration information sharing. We started going to information briefings from law enforcement, the downtown bid, the Golden Triangle bid, other neighborhood planning committees. We were sitting in briefings with the Secret Service, the Department of Homeland Security, certainly Metropolitan Police Department, FBI, Park Police, and then lastly, Metro Transit Police Department. And these briefings included things from parade routes to when vehicles will no longer be allowed in the checkpoint areas, street closures, credentials for accessing security checkpoints, public transportation, and then lastly, regional threats. Now, going into inauguration morning, we had no credible threat that was announced during any of these briefings that we were attending. So in order to continue to plan for that, we did several things. And one of them is we first started with our mass communication system, which is LiveSafe. Mass messaging and communications, as you guys know, they are critical in a critical component of any emergency event. During the inauguration, we set out to provide a resource for two-way messaging between building staff and tenants in real time. Our security provider was able to put out about 75 field security officers in the field amongst the crowds near the mall for the inauguration to be able to give us real-time events and real-time situations that were happening. The user-friendly portion of LiveSafe really comes into play right here. If I could just jump into that before I jump into these numbers, Alex. The Admiral team had not been trained on using LiveSafe. We literally decided to train the Admiral team 2 days before the inauguration. We were able to get that many people to download the app and sit through 2 training sessions 2 days before the event happened. And I gotta tell you, they all received it and received it well. Although we did not have any credible intelligence of incidents that were threatening or going to happen in our region, that is certainly not what happened. It went really bad, really fast. Fires, a lot of property damage to different commercial office buildings, retail stores. There was an area between 13th and 12th Street on I Street where they burst every window of every building and retail store in the entire block. We were fortunate. For our entire portfolio, we had 0 reports of any property damage. And I 100% believe that it was due to us being able to deploy staff to the right locations, primarily because of the information we were receiving from LiveSafe and the LiveSafe tips that we were getting. I want to get into some stats real quick. From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 2017 Inauguration Day, we received 180 emergency tips sent to the LiveSafe dashboard. 91%, this is unique, 91% of those tips contain some form of a chat, back and forth communication with security, back and forth communication with whoever was sending it, whether it's a tenant or not. But 91% of the tips had other conversation other than just, hey, I have an issue, and then it got ignored. No, 91% of those, there were conversation. This is another big number. 57% of those tips had media attached. So it was either pictures or videos or something to that magnitude, which I believe was another reason why we were well informed of what was happening out in the field. Only 2% of those tips were sent by an anonymous source. So everyone was comfortable with sending the tip, other than just 2% of the tips. More breakdown, 133 of the 180 tips were reports of protest activity. 28 tips were of other concern reports. 7 tips were reports of property damage, none at Brookfield locations. 6 tips were of suspicious activity. 4 tips were of suspicious packages. 1 tip reporting injury medical, and then 1 tip was reporting harassment. What we sent out was 11 broadcast messages that day, 1 broadcast check-in message, 1 safe walk request to monitor the location of a security supervisor who was caught in a crowd control situation. Now, I want to stop there real quick, Alex, if I could just talk about that. This was a very panic, dangerous situation that one of the security supervisors ended up in. He was monitoring the crowds, and before he knew it, a large, pretty violent crowd with rocks and bricks and other projectiles basically surrounded him. And we no longer had communication with him via his cell phone. But he remembered that he had the LiveSafe app, and he sent us a request to the dashboard to monitor him on Safe Walk. Because he did that, we were able to pinpoint exactly where he was in the crowd, and we were able to send people in to help him out. Fortunately, he was not injured. No one hurt him. People said a lot of bad, negative things to him, but he ended up being safe. And I again do believe that could have got really, really bad if he didn't have the mindset to remember that I have the application and I sent this safe walk request. Quite naturally, after that is when we sent the broadcast check-in to make sure that everyone else was safe. And it turns out that everyone was safe, everyone was sound, and we ended up having no real incidents at the properties. And again, I'm going to say it again. I believe it was due to us having the ability to deploy people to the right location and put up a good security front to show that that our security team was present. LiveSafe was also used that day in 2 different regional command centers. We had a command center set up in Bethesda, Maryland, and then we had one set up here in the DC region, and we had both activated from 5 a.m. To 10 p.m. and we were able to share different tips that were coming in from both, because they all end up affecting us. Out of the 180 tips that were sent in, 110 of those were sent in specifically for DC. So there was another 70 that had come from Virginia and Maryland. Although the inauguration was not in either one of those 2 states, we still had a lot of activity regarding protests that day. So, Alex, those are some numbers that happened on Inauguration Day. I mean, I can get into a little bit more engagement about it, but I really want to make sure that we keeping the emphasis on how we were able to get these images that you guys are seeing on the screen, as well as a lot of more information during the inauguration. So I'll close this portion with this. We set up in our command center a couple of televisions. One was based on local news, and the other was based on the cable news networks. So all the cable news networks, they really only show the parade route and how beautiful the city was, and the the Secret Service and all of the beautiful things that were happening. And the local news channels, they were really showing all the mayhem that was happening in the city. We were able to get information before either was reporting anything. So we knew about this limousine here that was set on fire easily 10 minutes before it was reported through any alert system that we had locally and or the news channel. I'm not a LiveSafe employee. I am just a fan of the application. And I do believe that is the reason why we were safe, our tenants were safe, and our security team ended up being real safe. And again, this was a very violent and very intense protest activity.
Yeah. I mean, this is an incredible story and such a great example of the effectiveness and the value of mass communications and two-way messaging during these critical scenarios. So thank you so much for your insight into that. And it sounds like a really important component of this situation for you and for Brookfield was how engaged your security team members are with the platform. So with that being said, can you tell me a little bit more as sort of a wrap up before we pass it over to Jeff for the alert demo about how you choose to deploy LiveSafe and to garner this engagement, because that really is a critical way to ensure that you can maintain safety?
So we set up several ways. First, I'll start with the security team, then I'll talk about Brookfield property management requirements, and then lastly, senior management. So it is part of the security protocol that every security officer, first day on, they are required to be trained on LiveSafe. We've made it part of our mandate, i.e. every officer assigned to the Brookfield portfolio must be CPR certified before they're assigned to the portfolio. That is now, LiveSafe is now a part of that. You cannot work in the portfolio without being trained on the usage of LiveSafe. That includes not only knowing how to receive tips, but also how to use our pre-emergency templates to reply to those tips. So every security officer is required to go through that training quarterly. In addition to that, something that we've done over the last year is now also having the officers trained to send broadcast messages. Most of the broadcast messages that they send, they are pre-arranged by property management. So it is something that's been cleared from senior level managers to use. Now the next phase would be property managers and our tenants. The first thing is, I have to say, in order for LiveSafe to continue to be effective, our property managers had to continue to promote LiveSafe. We've been a partner with LiveSafe for several years now. Everyone knows what Brookfield does. This 2017, that was our first test of LiveSafe, but I believe we were LiveSafe partners back in 2016, maybe towards the end of 2015. So we constantly market the LiveSafe platform at our buildings, even during non-emergency times. We use the Captivate screens in our elevator. We always have a message reminding tenants to download the app. Our security team has the LiveSafe cards that was provided, and they will give the LiveSafe cards to tenants. Hey, just a reminder, we have the LiveSafe app. You should download it to get building information. The marketing of the app, it's a nonstop thing. We have tenant engagement events, and we always set a table up, and I've brought in a LiveSafe staff several times to assist with that, where we'll have the LiveSafe staff, police, fire, Red Cross, cleaners. We'll have all kinds of people in, and tenants get an opportunity to engage with the LiveSafe team. And we do things like raffles in order to get the tenants to go ahead and engage and download the app. And then the last group, which I think is probably one of the most important group, and probably one of the things we all, the group that I think we all just don't necessarily push for this, and that's our senior level managers. They're not normally the ones that are dealing with the emergency, but there are opportunities per business continuity where that senior level person would have to do some notification, and in some cases, they will also have to fill in for one of the property teams to get information out. So what we do is we require all of the department heads once a quarter to send a test LiveSafe message in order to keep them abreast of the system and how to use it. I strongly feel, and most of you on the phone will probably agree with me, if you don't constantly practice or exercise something, you'll forget how to use it when you need it in emergency time. Although we have handwritten procedures and we've made those minimized so that folks can have them on their phone, we do think it's important that each department head goes in and they actually do it. And the reason it works here is because our top person, our senior vice president of operations, he believes that it's important that they all do it. So he sets the tone, and so everyone else does it. Now, other ways that we use it, we don't only use it for emergency situations. We will use it to notify tenants of traffic situations that may affect their commute in, may affect their commute out. We notify tenants via broadcast if there's, say, a snowstorm the night before and we've gotten the sidewalks and everything clear. The next morning, we'll send a 6 a.m. LiveSafe message to our tenants, inform them that the sidewalks are clear and it's safe to come to the building. And then I think I heard Alex mention this earlier. We certainly use it for any kind of return to the property after an evacuation, whether that's a real evacuation and or a fire drill. And that's another opportunity we take to market. When people are returning to the building, we're giving them the handouts, we're giving them the cards, and we're reminding them at that point to use the app to let us know of any situation that's happening, but also to remember, or to receive, I should say, critical information that could be affecting the building.
That is so great to hear. And I think, Lynile, you really touched on an important point, which is part of the effectiveness of these platforms is you do have to engage them with regular usage so that there is familiarity and understanding. It's not just totally a plug and play. You really need that engagement from the top down. So it sounds like you've done a wonderful job at Brookfield of engaging the LiveSafe platform. So we're going to move on now to our alert demo. And I wanted to thank you so much, Lynile, for your participation. It was a pleasure to hear from you. And I know that all of us at Vector are so glad to hear of the many ways that LiveSafe has been able to help Brookfield, and you've been a wonderful partner over the years. So if anybody has questions for Lynile about Brookfield's LiveSafe usage, feel free to drop those in the question box and we will try to get to them at the end of this presentation. But for right now, we are going to have one more quick poll.
Okay, this poll is, which of the following threats might your organization most need to use an EMNS for? The choices are security emergency alert, weather alert, organizational update, facilities alert, or other. So right now, it looks like we have about 58% for security emergency alert, 31% for weather, and that's about it.
Yeah, well, those are definitely great ways that EMNS platforms can be engaged, and particularly for emergency alerts, here are two resources that you might want to look at. The first is a case study from Brookfield Properties discussing what Lynile was just explaining about the inauguration protest, so it provides a little bit more information. And then this one on the right is a use case about a shooting at the Fashion Show Mall in early 2020 in Las Vegas, which you may have heard about. And this is actually another property of Brookfield's, and they engaged LiveSafe for mass notifications during this event. So both of these are available at the bit.ly links shown on the screen, and you can also find them on the Vector Solutions website under Success Stories if you'd like to learn a bit more. But for now, I'm going to pass it off to Jeff Hudak to provide some more insight into LiveSafe Alert with a live demo.
All right, thanks, Alex, and thanks, Lynile. Appreciate your partnership and your excellent storytelling here. You're always a hard act to follow, so we'll let the software speak for itself here. I'm happy to introduce to all of you Vector LiveSafe Alert. It's our new product offering designed specifically for your mass notification and two-way organizational communication needs. So before I jump right into the software, I just wanted to cover the primary user personas for LiveSafe Alert. So first off is your administrators. So these are the folks that are sending outbound messages to employees. So it includes your safety and security personnel, business continuity managers, human resources, and more recently, COVID-19 task forces. And then on the other end is the recipients of your broadcast messages. So they could be your typical on-site employees, lone workers, or other potentially high-risk job functions, folks working in the field. All of those would be your recipients. So this demo will show you the end-to-end flow and interactions for how LiveSafe Alert facilitates real-time communications and feedback between these two parties. So as you can see right here, this is the web interface for the LiveSafe Alert platform. So this is where your safety and security administrators will log in to deliver alerts to members of your organization. This is a SaaS product that's fully accessible from a web browser. It doesn't require any hardware or software install, and administrators are able to self-service to create their tenant and start to onboard users into the system. So your administrators can go ahead and manage all of the users, add their contact information, email and phone number, as well as groups. So you can do this by job family, location specific, whatever works best for your organization. And then you can quickly spin up some new groups as well. Just coming back here, a couple of key features that differentiate LiveSafe Alert from other solutions in the market include our robust check-in and scheduling capabilities, which you'll see as part of the demo here. So where I'm going to take you guys now from the home screen is into the primary workspace for alert messages to be sent out. So this is where your administrators compose, deliver, schedule, and review any broadcast or check-in messages. So you can see here, this is a previously scheduled broadcast for a daily health verification. So this is just sent out to all of the different job families, asking them to check in, to respond with one of these options, and it's scheduled Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. So every day before you come into the office, you can verify that you're feeling well. If you're feeling unwell, you can stay home, work remotely. And it's nice to have that set and forget it when it comes to the scheduling feature. And then you can look at some previous broadcasts that were sent. This is an example of a site check-in for any hazards that users might have observed. Again, Lanial had talked about submitting tips into the system, but check-ins also allow you to proactively call out things that you think might be an issue, and then you can verify that with your employees through sending check-in messages. And then you can see other messages that have been sent out in the past. So this is really the primary workspace. So what I'm going to walk you through now with the end-to-end communication workflow is sending out a broadcast message. And for the purposes of this demo, I do have one queued up. So this is for a weather alert, and this will be a check-in message that also includes an outbound voice call. So starting from the beginning, the first step is to create your message. You can customize the from field, whether it's coming from safety, security, operations, or if it's specific to a site. Also the subject line that would be populated in your email and text message, as well as the message body. Moving on to the next step, it allows you to preview and customize your message per channel. So again, if you wanted to do something separate, you wanted to customize the message for your SMS, you're able to do that inline. You'll also notice that there's a 2,000 character limit for text messages when they're sent out. Some providers do limit you to 160. We at Vector LiveSafe, we allow up to 2,000 characters, so you can make sure all of the contents of your message and critical communications get out to the folks. And with text messages, really the medium matters here. SMS open rates are often as high as 98%. So that coupled with email and voice, make sure that you get the right message out at the right time. Email as alone, if you think that you could go with a simple email distribution, that's incredibly ineffective when it comes to mass communications, because on average, emails alone get about 20 to 30% in terms of the open rate. So again, just wanted to call that out, that the channel itself matters. So this is specifically for the message that will be sent out, but as part of it, you can add a check-in, right? So this allows you to be very specific about this as a weather alert check-in, and then you can customize the options. They can also color code and add icons to them to signify it also allows you to add additional selections inline, and it allows you to handle the multi-select scenario. So if you wanted check boxes versus radio buttons, all of that is supported. And this check-in feature is incredibly powerful because it's not just a simple, I'm okay or I need help. right? This allows you to cover a variety of use cases and make sure that you're connecting with your community on a regular basis and getting that two-way feedback. So finally, I will enable a voice call. So again, this is an outbound robocall that will be delivered to those users. And specifically with this, it's a dangerous ICE situation. So you want to make sure that if they're not checking their email or don't get the text message immediately, the voice call will prompt them to fill out the check-in. So with that, I'll move to the next step to select groups. So as you saw in groups management before, you can pick and segment the audience however you'd like. And you'll notice as I start updating the audience, the total number of users is pre-calculated for me. So I know exactly who I'm going to reach before I send out the message. So I'll be sending this message out to 21 users across all of the core job families here. And then the final step is the broadcast summary. This allows you to send with confidence. It also allows you to go back to any of the previous steps if you wanted to edit your channels, your message, or any potential options. So again, this allows you, before you press that button, you really feel good about the message that is going out and it's very clear. It's not a clunky interface, which a lot of in EMNS products, you see a lot of this in the market, that it's not clear exactly the message that you're sending out. So our world-class design really covers for that. One last feature is scheduling of the broadcast. So you can do this on a single or a recurring basis. So you're able to, this looks very similar to Google Calendar. A lot of those conventions have been pulled in. You can pick the time for the message. You can also go on a recurring basis, right? So daily, weekly, monthly, Monday to Friday. You can do it on a custom basis if you'd like to. So all of the options are there. That makes it very nice, again, to set it and forget it when it comes to scheduling these messages. So for the purposes of this broadcast, I'm going to go ahead and send it out right now. And it will give me a confirmation dialog right before I send it out. And then once this message goes, I'm going to switch over to the recipient side of the house. Okay, so you can see that the broadcast message was successfully sent. And you can see on my phone here, there's a text message that came through. And then here's the voice call. Just we'll take a listen here together. Hello.
This message is being delivered to you from Vector Solutions HQ regarding weather alert, dangerous icy conditions. Team members, please check in to let us know if you plan to be traveling or in the field today. Excessive icy conditions will create dangerous travel conditions, and Vector Solutions HQ is on standby to support anyone who has trouble due to the inclement weather. Thank you.
And another thing from an end user perspective is that if you do not pick up that phone call, I know we all get a lot of robocalls these days, it will automatically leave you a voicemail. So again, you can tell the urgency of the situation. So what I'm going to do is I will take the email just to show you what it looks like. So our emails are very mobile friendly. And you can see the message that was sent out from Vector Solutions HQ about the weather alert for dangerous icy conditions, and then it asks you to complete the check-in. So each one of the users that, when they click that link, it's unique to them. So you know that this is Jeff Hudak responding. And I can say that I am working in the field today, and I might need some help at some point. So again, I'm going to send that response in. You can see that it's timestamped with my information. And then now switching back from an administrative point of view, you can see the responses that have come in from the check-in. And they'll be trickling in as I sent to some other folks on the Vector side. So you can see a progress bar of all of the different responses. So the first thing is I need to see who needs urgent assistance. And on the map view, You can see that that is Jeff Dalto. I have his approximate address of where he was in distress. I have his email and phone number, so I can immediately get in touch with him that he needs help. And other things you're able to do is filter. So let me look at those that are working from home. We have Miley working from home in Puerto Rico, so quite jealous of her. And then you can, again, drill into all of the employees that you can say that Tim is safe, he will not have any issues, Jason is all good. But again, the power of the check-in, getting this immediate feedback is really critical, not only for crisis communications. This really helps you across the board in creating an effective communication strategy for your organization. So a couple other things here, just to show from a delivery standpoint. You can see those that received message successfully in all channels, those that might have had an issue and only were a partial delivery. And the good news here is that everyone received the message in some capacity and there were no failures. But what I can do is see individual level responses from users. So you can see that I received the message from product management. You can see it's green across the board, but you can look here on our support team that John Smith has an invalid contact. And if you can see that email address, it is an illegitimate email address, and that's why it's not showing. So again, this allows you to drill in to see who received the message and then who did not receive the message and why was it that they didn't receive it. So with that should wrap up everything with the alert demo. So happy to show you the end-to-end communication flow, and we can open it up for Q&A.
At this time, Alex, there's one question that came in regarding, let's see, to maintain employee information, current new hires and terminations, does LiveSafe work with an HR system? For example, UKG or Ulti Pro?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we have a number of means between LiveSafe Enterprise and Alert to sync user contact information. That's really the first problem that you need to solve. It's one, get your users into the system, and then two is delivering those outbound messages. So the primary route that we see with most of our clients, which is the easiest, is through CSV file upload, but we also support other API connectors and are continuing to build out more tooling into the platform to be compatible with multiple providers and industry leaders there.
If those are all the questions for now, then I just want to say thank you to everybody who attended the webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Jeff, or Lanile. Our emails and contact information is in the beginning of this presentation, and I believe it's included in follow-ups. Feel free to also connect with us on LinkedIn and reach out that way if you're more comfortable, but we'd be happy to answer any further questions or direct you to the relevant member of the LiveSafe or Vector Solutions team to address any product interest or further questions or concerns you have. So thank you all for being here.